of that in the Dallas market, surprisingly. Okay. And that kind of also happened back when, back in '08 when the actual financial crisis happened, right? A lot of, that was an actual financial crisis where home prices dipped like crazy. All of that stuff happened. Right now with the COVID situation, we were expecting, okay, we're going to take somewhat of a hit, right? But surprisingly, days on market have gone down. Homes are still selling very, very quickly. Anything under like $300,000 in Dallas, there's still multiple offers and a bidding wars still happening.
Wow.
And that's surprising to a certain point, but it's just because of the demand, right? Just like any other business, real estate is also about supply and demand. The cool thing about real estate is you can neither create it or destroy it. You can't create or destroy land. It's going to be there. You can break down a house and rebuild it in the same spot, but there's only so much finite land that's available in each city, right?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that with, like, for example, with Capel, right? This was a sustainable, kind of example that we have, right? Where we just ran out of real estate. It's almost like the Manhattan, right?
Exactly.
Of Dallas, right? And now we're moving into other parts like Frisco and and beyond, even Prosper County, and we're starting to build a way out.
And I'm glad. Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up Frisco, right? Like there's an article that recently came out which named like the most recession-proof cities in the US for 2020, because even since the beginning of 2020, before the COVID situation, there were still talks about a recession coming, right? So when this came out, Frisco ranked as the #1 recession-proof city in all of America.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Okay. And Plano came in at #3. Out of the top 10, 3 of the top 10 cities that are supposed to be most recession proof this year came from North Texas. So, we live in a different market here than somewhere else in the country.
Yeah. And I think that's because, of the taxes. We don't have, we have federal income tax. We don't have federal and state income tax. We're exempt from the state income tax. There's so many jobs that are moving in here. When we looked at the idea behind, Trump's presidency and making America great again, a lot of that is tied to jobs and economic opportunity. And it seems like there's somewhat of an insulating effect because we have these larger companies. They're IT based as well. You have Uber that was planning on moving here. You have Tesla that might be moving out of California and expanding its reach into different states, and Texas is on that list as well. Toyota moved to Frisco. Nebraska Furniture Market, all this infrastructure is kind of pushing along with jobs and then economic opportunity as well. And so, you and I were talking about this, and you said, "Hey, I've been busier now than before COVID hit." So, talk to us a little bit about that and what everybody's kind of looking to and being interested in, and what the future kind of holds for us from an investment standpoint as well as from a home ownership standpoint.
Right. So again, I'm just going to put this disclaimer out there because no one has a crystal ball to predict the future.
Right.
So these are just going to be some of my opinions, right? One thing that I'm really noticing, and one of the biggest concerns that people have especially when they talk about investing in real estate over here, is even though the demand for home buyers is still strong right now, right? And for those that have really been affected financially, due to the COVID situation, and if people end up selling their homes, they're still going to need a place to live. So rentals are still going to be good.
Right.
The demand for rentals is still very, very high. Like for instance, there's a client that I'm working with that's moving here from Chicago, okay, for work. They want to rent for the first year before they decide to buy. And guess what? And they don't have a low rental budget either. They're willing to pay up to $2,500 a month for rent.
Right.
And guess what? We've been looking for the past 3 weeks. They've applied at, I think, like about 6 or 7 homes, which got multiple applications on the first day those homes went on the market for rental.
Wow. And this is recent. This is during COVID.
This is during COVID.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't even want to look at it. We'll apply right now, sight unseen. And they're still not getting it because there are like multiple applications that come in like 30 minutes after a listing hits the market.
Wow.
So that's how strong the demand is right now.
Right.
And from an investment perspective, that's why like single family homes that people are like purchasing to rent out, I feel are going to be a very good investment because, people will always need a roof over their head. Real estate is an essential business, right? So because of that, there are certain parts of Dallas, especially in the North DFW suburbs, that the rental market is insane. Like I don't know if you checked out my video that I did on Melissa on my YouTube channel,
Mhm.
but Melissa, it's a city that I feel like not a lot of people have heard about, and I'm promoting that city like crazy to all of my investor clients because there's zero inventory available for rent, and everything that's been put on the market in the last year, everything's been rented,
Wow.
and the average days on market is under 30 days.
Wow. Wow.
It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when we look at investing, right, the traditional way of looking into real estate investment is I'm going to buy this out and then I'm going to Airbnb it. And Airbnb is going to get me, 3 times more than what I would after I pay off my monthly mortgage, right? And I think that model is also shifting. So how are you seeing that, economic model kind of take its course?
So there's pros and cons to the whole Airbnb concept, right? It's great for short-term rentals, but a lot of short-term rentals are also being a lot of cities and ordinances, they're trying to crack down on short-term rentals. And then especially when you're looking at purchasing a house to do that, it works out well if you don't have an HOA, because there are going to be rules that the HOA bylaws are going to have that you can't use it as a short-term rental property.
Right.
You can
Right.
rent it out, but it needs to be, somewhat of a longer lease.
Mhm.
So, it's a good model, but because of the current situation that we're in that we've never experienced before, the demand is also going. That's why Airbnb like laid off so much of their staff.
Right.
You know, they've cut down a lot on their staff because they're expecting that dip as well, because there are units that are sitting empty now on Airbnb that used to be fully packed,
Right.
right? So from the investment perspective, I've always felt when you're going to have a rental property that you're going to lease out to someone, the longer term is usually better just because it's lower maintenance. You'll make more money off of Airbnb, but you're also going to be a lot more active. So a lot of people that invest in real estate look for more of a passive stream, right?
Yeah.
So if you buy a property, hand it off to a property management company, you're just collecting the checks and they're taking care of the headaches, right?
Well, yeah, and it's risk and reward, right? I mean, you're
Mm-hmm,
looking at something that is very short term, high risk of being able
mm-hmm,
to, have a certain number of days rented. And,
mm-hmm.
if that's the design of, most of your rental properties, and now COVID hits, you took that risk and now you're kind of laying in that bed for a minute until you can get it rented out, which seems like,
And
it's,
here's a funny thing. I'm gonna give you an exclusive. I'm gonna disclose something that I haven't made public before, right?
sure.
I have a few units that I've got on Airbnb,
Hmm.
and I've noticed a decline in that.
Right.
And guess what? They're very very profitable,
Hmm.
right? But because of the COVID situation, a lot of people aren't traveling as much, and when the traveling stops, there aren't a lot of people that live in town that want to stay in an Airbnb,
Right.
right? It's you and Dallas has been a hot spot for it. So I've got a few places on Airbnb, but right now I'm seeing a decline in reservations as well than I used to. And my occupancy rate used to be like 96 to 98%. It's killer.
Wow, wow. Well, how do you adjust to that financial model, right? When you're used to this gravy train kind of coming through, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden you see a drop. I mean, do you kind of make the jump and say, "Hey, I need to start creating long-term, residence here until the smoke clears, and then maybe rent it out or lease it out for a year or sublet it out for a year." How do you adjust?
Well, the way I'm looking at it, I feel like this is just a temporary blip. Okay. You know, especially seeing how fast Texas is just opening up.
Right,
It's concerning to me from a personal perspective,
right,
but the adjustments are being made as the governor sees fit, right?
right,
So as things loosen up more and the city opens up again, it's happening a lot faster than I expected. So even those things I'm expecting to rebound quickly. So if I put people in my units on a yearly basis, I'm going to lose out on some profit that I can make with the short-term stuff, right?
right.
So I'm just gonna weather it through, and then see how fast we recover, because again, when you start off businesses like that, when you're thinking about those things, you kind of you have to factor in the cost of those places being empty. And
Right.
that's one thing that I see a lot of first time investors, one of the mistakes that I see them making, even when you buy a single family home and you're going to lease it out to someone, right? There are costs associated with it that people don't notice. They're just like, you know what? This is my mortgage. This is how much rent I'm going to collect. That's going to be my cash flow. Wrong.
Right.
Okay. You have to factor in when a tenant leaves and a new tenant comes in, the place is going to be empty. You're
Right.
going to have
And it
expenses
could
to
be
hold it
multiple
over.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
So
then
you got to
maintenance
be paying that
cost.
mortgage out. Yeah, you got to pay that mortgage out of your pocket. Then even when the tenant is in there, you have to factor in your maintenance and repair costs.
And then property taxes on top of that.
Right. So there's a lot of expenses that come along with owning a property that a lot of people may not look at, especially when they're starting off.
Right. Yeah, and especially because these cities are growing so fast. I mentioned the property tax situation because even here in Irving, the property taxes over time started increasing, and
Mhm.
they adjust your monthly mortgage amount, and it's nothing that your bank can do or anything like that, but you have to make those adjustments, and you have to understand
Yeah,
that I'm investing in a growing city. My property value is going to grow, and then my property tax is going to grow in ratio to that, and so there are
absolutely.
all these unexpected I guess expenditures that come through an investment, and we have to take those into account as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not always as simple as it looks. Because if it was, dude, everyone would be doing it.
Everybody would be doing it, and it's not as
Yeah.
as risk free either. I think with the last Fed call with Jamie Dimon, when he also talked about his quarterly earnings with Chase, one thing that they kind of are locking down on is how easily they give away mortgage.
Oh
it-
yeah.
yeah,
They were the first ones to make it really strict.
right,
You know,
absolutely,
Chase was the first bank that's like, you know what? Now you need your credit score above this, and you got to put minimum of this much down for us to lend you any money. You
right,
know, so
right,
they're the first ones to make that adjustment. But again, when a company that big makes an announcement like that, there's a hysteria that follows,
right.
right? Then the public starts being, oh my God, that's the only way I can purchase a house. No, you can still get a loan with 3% down.
Right.
3%, 3.5%. You're going to be paying PMI, but you're still going to be a homeowner, you know?
Right.
So, and that's another thing I kind of wanted to address real quick is, there's also a misunderstanding out there in the general public that, once they get tagged with PMI, they have to pay for the entire 30 year.
Mhm.
They don't. When your property appreciates and when you pay into it, as soon as you hit over a 20% equity in your home, you can request the bank to stop charging you PMI.
Oh, okay. Wow.
They do an appraisal at that point,
Yeah.
and then if it appraises, boom, your PMI gets taken off. So you might just end up paying PMI for a few years because
Mhm.
the way the rates that the properties are appreciating in the DFW area,
Right.
even if you put like 5-10% down, you may get to that 20% a lot quicker than you think. So you don't need to pay that PMI for the rest of the 30-year loan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with
Yeah.
Akbar, actually, aka. Yeah, we're back with episode 44 of Mind Over Music, and I have my very special guest, Akbar, aka Akbar. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, no, and I love everything that you've been talking about so far. People who are looking into an investment property. I know that you've had a lot of exposure into both single family, multifamily homes, and where do we start with the whole investment process? There's people who are sitting on some capital now. They don't want to have too much exposure. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the lending side as well, but how do we prepare ourselves for this next phase as we've seen with the economy and the government flushing in so many trillions of dollars to save the economy during COVID, and that's going to have an adverse effect downstream with regard to
Mhm.
inflation. And so what $300,000 for a house is worth today is going to be rapidly changed over the next 10 years, and just based on inflation itself. So you're borrowing money now valued at 300,000, but over a 30-year or 15-year mortgage, that 300,000 is going to be worth much less, but the property itself is going to be worth much more in terms of just the pure dollar amount and not including inflation. And so, but inflation is the driver on that back engine. And so, as we understand these economics and we start reconciling all of these things, how do we approach our first investment, and what's a safer bet versus a more riskier bet, and how do you hedge?
So I'm a big proponent of promoting single family residences. Okay.
Right.
Multifamily units are great if you've got the holding power and you've got a little bit more capital. Okay.
Mhm.
Single family residences make great investments for first time investors, and especially, if you want to start building up a portfolio, because what's going to happen is, you know, God forbid, something happens, you need cash fast. You're going to have a tougher time selling a 20 unit apartment building than you are a single home. So even if you have a portfolio of 5 homes, you can sell one and still hang on to the other four in case if you need the financial,
If you need
backing
liquidity.
again,
Right.
if you
Right.
need liquidity, right?
Right.
So, single family homes make really, really good investments in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. Number one is the liquidity. Number two, they're easier to acquire, easier to rent out, because people that are willing to pay rent on an apartment, if they can get a similar home relatively for the same price, they'd rather get that space and that privacy.
Right.
Right. So you also, you can also get longer term tenants that way. So this way your turnover is a lot less in tenants. So, if you were to start from scratch and be like, hey, I've got a little bit of cash. What do I need to do? And how much can I do? Right. So step one, you call me. All right.
And
Right.
how does the audience reach you?
So you can reach me. You can email me at ak@theakrealtygroup.com. Call me, text me at 972-905-9566, or you can hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Dallas Amplified, or check out my YouTube channel. Just type in AK Ali Realtor, and you'll see me
AK Ali Realtor on YouTube. And that
on
YouTube channel
YouTube.
has been absolutely amazing. It's such a wealth of information and knowledge, especially around the dynamics of the Dallas market. And you do a great
Thank
job
you.
with that.
Thank you so much. And then once you kind of reach out to me or any other realtor, right? uh, the first thing you want to do is you want to talk to a lender and get it pre-approved for a mortgage, unless if you're paying cash, because the lending for a investment property is going to be very different than your primary residence.
In what
Okay.
way?
So for a primary residence, you can get away with, for a conventional loan, you can do 3% down, or for an FHA, you can get it for 3.5% down.
Right.
For an investment loan, you have to put minimum of 20% down.
20%. Yeah.
For investment properties, there's no PMI, so you got to put in that 20%.
Mhm.
Okay. And then interest rates for investment loans are also going to be a tad bit higher than for primary residences. So you got to factor in that difference in the interest rate as well when you're looking. Okay. Once you have your, all the financial stuff all squared away, and once you have your pre-approval, you're set to go. You've got the money for closing costs and all of that stuff. Then, when you have your real estate agent look into properties for you, have them run an absorption report for you for particular areas. Okay. So if you're going to buy a single family home in a certain zip code or a certain neighborhood, right? Find out, don't, people usually are going to be like, what, how many homes rented out in the last 30 or 60 days, or say 90 days?
Right.
That's not going to give you an accurate picture, because people sign leases for a year, right?
Mhm.
So run a report for the past 365 days so you can get some actual numbers of how many listings went on the market in that neighborhood and how quickly they got rented and at what price. So then you can average out, okay, this is how much you should expect to get for your rental,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
this is
that's how
very
you're gonna
similar. This is very similar to like asking your car dealer for the CARFAX, right? It's
exactly.
go to your realtor, or if not, I'm sure there's other tools out there if you don't have one, but ask your realtor for an absorption
Mhm.
report for the
Yeah,
last year.
because a lot of this data we only have access to through the North Texas Real Estate Information System,
Right.
which we as licensed realtors have access to. So
Right.
we can get a lot more data. And working with any realtor, like it doesn't take very long to like run those reports. So you should, especially if you're working with someone to help you locate a home, they'll be more than happy to run these things for you. So
Right.
just look at those numbers carefully and stuff. Just be like, I feel like this neighborhood's gonna do well. Well, feelings don't,
They don't matter without
you know what?
data.
If you're buying a house to live in, go with your feelings, because you got to feel like you love that home. But
Right.
when you're renting it out, man, it's all about the numbers,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So once you kind of run those reports and you see, okay, cool. So I'm expecting my house to be on the market for X amount of days because that's what the history has shown. Then you start shopping around in that particular area for a certain price point, see if the numbers work out for you. Once you do that, then it's just, getting it listed once you close on it, getting a tenant in there, doing the background checks, doing all of that stuff. And most likely the real estate agent that you use that's going to list the rental property for you, they'll be able to guide you with that process too, because there are websites online where people can pay a pay a fee, get their own background check done, but you're in control of seeing those reports.
Right. And if you guys have any questions about this process, call us at the studio. We have Akbar Live, 972-501-9390. Radio's out where your voice matters. I think, Akbar, when you look at the end of the year and you say, okay, this is going to be a good investment versus a challenging investment, what are those numbers and what do those margins look like? Because, as a landlord, right, especially if you're doing a single family and, you're the sole investor and you have maybe $40,000, $50,000 or $30,000, and you're looking for something to invest in that range. At the end of the year, you need to be able to float, as we talked about at the beginning of the
Mhm.
show, some of those numbers out a little bit further, and you need to say, okay, I need to accommodate for these expenses. If I do a 1-year lease and it's on the market for 60 days, I need to be able to cover it. If the volume and population is growing, the taxes are also going to change, things of that sort. So how do we view those numbers from an economic standpoint?
So there's multiple ways. So I've got, the funny thing is I've been working with a lot of investors lately as well with all of this stuff. And I've noticed there are two types of investors. One that are just cash flow crazy. Like,
Right.
how much is this thing gonna cash flow me?
Right.
Right?
Cash on cash, man. I want to
Right?
invest. I want to get cash right back
And the funny thing is the people that want the most cash flow are the ones that are putting the least money down. So they don't
out.
realize that you're not gonna cash flow if you're putting the minimum 20% down. Because
Exactly.
guess what? You're on a $1,300 mortgage, you're not gonna be collecting $3,000 in rent, bro.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Unless it's a really hot area and you're Airbnb it out and it's not a leak.
Yeah, unless if you're gonna be that active, yeah, you'll do just fine. But if you're looking at the traditional, hey, I'm gonna lease it out for a year on a yearly lease, stuff like that, guess
Mm.
what? Your $1,400 mortgage, you're gonna get like $1,800 rent on it. You
Right.
take out expenses and you take out property management fees and stuff like that, you're breaking even.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Unless if you're putting more money down. But here's the flip side of it, right? The other thing is I'm also working with a lot of investors that are fine with no cash flow.
Hmm.
They want to enjoy having that mortgage paid by someone else's money and
Right.
build equity in that house
Yep.
and enjoy the property appreciation. Because what people don't understand, you're not only paying off your mortgage and building equity in the house with the tenant's money. The property appreciation is also money in the bank for you when you go to sell it,
Right.
right? So even if you break even, guess what? You're still growing at a certain percentage every year. That's much better than what a savings account is going to get you.
Yeah, and it's really your investment strategy, right? You have to start with your why, and it's, am I here to build generational wealth, and do I really want money in terms of equity, or do I need kind of a dividend and cash flow type situation? And with either one of them, you have to have a sustainable way of being able to support yourself. Unless you're only investing, you're going to be very active. And you're trying to develop cash flow as an active investor. I agree completely here, okay, because there's so many people that go in and have such high expectations, and they want to do minimal effort or minimal amount. And if you have the cash flow and you have not through property investment, but through another means, and you have a lot of money to invest in, well, maybe then you'll get a better return on investment. Otherwise, you're absolutely right. It is marginal. You're talking about razor thin margins, but you're playing the equity game with little upfront cash
and
flow.
the point of especially individuals getting into investing in real estate, I feel the big why needs to be building and preserving wealth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, because let me give you an example, right? And I've worked with clients multiple times with a similar situation. Okay, get your first property, fine, put down 20%, but buy a new construction home that comes with a ton of warranties, which is going to lower your expenses. And when you purchase a brand new construction home in a neighborhood, because while the construction's still happening in that neighborhood, the neighborhood's still developing, what's going to happen, and history has shown this over and over and over again, you're going to see the most exponential growth in the first 5 to 7 years.
Right.
And then it's going to taper off, and it's still going to grow, but not as fast as it does in the first 5 to 7 years, right? So what you're going to do is put 20% down, break even, build that equity in that house. After 5 to 7 years, sell that property. The money that you originally put down plus the appreciation and the equity you built with the tenant's rent, when you cash out that money, guess what? Now with that same money, without having to put an extra diamond, now you can buy 2 properties.
Right.
Okay. So if you really think about it, if you're at a point, if you're in your like 30s or 40s and you're like, hey, let me do this, guess what? In the next 20 years, right? You go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8. Guess what? In 20 years, with the same equity and the same money you put down for the first house, now you have 8 homes in your portfolio.
Right. Right.
All right.
And that's
And
that's
that's how you build
generational
wealth.
wealth. That's
And that's how you,
generational wealth.
right.
Right. Now you have different sources of income. Right. You can go in. You can borrow money against those properties for other investments as you see fit. But you're playing the equity game, and you have something to trade. You have something to build off of, especially in these opportunities today. Right. You see the feds are completely slashing interest rates. And you
Mhm.
can, if you have, if you had played this game in the early 2000s, right, or in the financial crisis of 2009, that mortgage crisis, when you had homes just, banks just had
Mhm.
so many foreclosed homes, and they had so much supply, and no matter what the demand was, we were getting houses for next to nothing. My family lives out in Euless, and that's what we were seeing neighborhoods, and we were looking at prices that were back in 1996, 1998 prices in 2009.
Wow.
And you
Yep.
look at that and you're like, okay, well, if we had played the game right, you would have had the minimum payment, right? And now today, with COVID hitting, with the Feds at the right place, lowering their interest rates, you could borrow back that money that you've
Mhm.
that you built equity on at 3%. And you can take that appreciated value. If we bought those houses in our area for $150,000, that are now worth $350,000. You borrow that money, free money that comes right back to you. You're still making money off the income from renting out that house, and then you can
Yep.
also use the equity somewhere else. And so, it's the way that the lens that you use must be a longer term lens. It's not
Yep.
going to be, these are for the people who kind of understand the value of taking care of the environment and climate change, right? Things that
Mhm.
you can see beyond tomorrow. We're not just feeding ourselves tomorrow, we're building a farm so that we can feed ourselves for generations at a time.
Absolutely, man. And that's what the point is. Like, you're not gonna get rich overnight investing in real estate. But guess what? It's one of the safest investments. Like, like this is gonna sound cliche, but dude, real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry,
Right. Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And if you look at statistically, especially in Texas, right? Since the creation, like beginning of time, ever since they started keeping records of real estate transactions, real estate in Texas has gone up like consistently on average 4% a year.
Wow. Wow.
You take the dips of the Great Recession, you take the dips of the Great Depression,
Right.
right? You
Right.
take all the ups and downs, but on average, real estate in Texas has appreciated 4% a year.
And the filter that we should see this investment through is not 4%, because
Yeah.
your overall equity is growing 4%. You're borrowing money from the bank at a
Hmm.
fraction of that. And so the
Yeah.
amount that your asset is increasing, it's as if I had bought this laptop, right, that I'm talking to you through right now, and the
Hmm.
laptop is increasing its value 4% per year. The laptop is worth $1,000, but I'm only paying $150 or
Yeah.
$200, like a fraction of it, probably like
And
$80 a month, right?
and think yeah, and think about it this way too, right? It's like, say for instance, you buy a house, you put $50,000 down, for instance, right?
Yeah,
You put $50,000 down, your monthly payment is, say, 1,300 $1,400 a month. Okay. Now you take your principal out of that. Yes, a big chunk of that is going to be interest, that all the amortization and all of that other stuff, right? Let's be very conservative. Say $400 to $500 a month goes to your principal.
right,
Okay. Over the first year, $500 a month, that's $6,000. You just made $6,000 with someone else's money on a $50,000 investment.
Exactly.
That's over
Exactly.
10%. That's over 10% right there. And you're not even counting in your appreciation of that property if you were to sell it after a year,
Yes.
right?
If anyone hears what we're saying, this is absolutely insane. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing this, especially with interest rates where they're at. The example that I had just given you, just to tag on to this, Akbar, is AK, is if I had borrowed this laptop that's $1,000, right, a MacBook Air for $1,000, and you have a 30-year fixed mortgage on this laptop. I'm paying you $2.77 per month to rent this laptop or to borrow this laptop for you, but it's considered my property, and it's increasing in value 4% every year. And so the return on investment is literally, on paper, cash on cash. And that's what you're talking about, is this idea that real estate has created more millionaires and multimillionaires than any other industry. You're not going to have $1 million in your bank account. You have $1 million in your portfolio, and that is the difference. You're not sitting there and buying Lambos. You're sitting there and buying houses that are appreciating in value, that are going to create this generational wealth, and this well-oiled machine in case you have economic downturns like this, that you have other sources of income that might be coming in, or that you could have the option of liquidating. So it insulates you a little bit better. And what better place to do it than Dallas, where you have huge jobs that are coming in. You have a stable market. Out of all the volatility, you have you also reports that are saying that we have a recession-proof economy in certain sectors of North Dallas. And so it's something to definitely think about and consider and look into a little bit further.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, right? If in doubt, talk to a real estate professional, right? Like if you feel there are so many people that feel like, you know what, I don't know where to start, or I don't know if this is right for me. Look at your options. Nothing bad came out of a conversation. You might just learn a thing or two. It might not be for you, but you might get something going in your head that might get you ready like 5 years down the road,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And that's how we
So
should be thinking about whenever we look at investments. If you are thinking about tomorrow, you are not ready for an investment. If you are trying to buy
yeah,
a tomato plant, and you're like, where are the tomatoes? You are not ready for an investment. Start at a seed level. Make sure that your soil is good, that you still have access to running water and clean water, that you can grow this plant over
yeah,
8 months or 2 years before you see your first fruit. And that is
absolutely.
how
And
you
then
should
what?
invest.
And what better place to grow that than the sunshine in Texas and North Dallas, right? So
Absolutely. 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 So Akbar, tell us again where we can reach you. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I would love to have you back on the show again to talk a little bit. I'd love to talk more investments on a private note with you as well, and bring
absolutely.
some people to you. And also another way of, and I want to mention this before we get off here, is creating syndication models, and being an accredited investor. A lot of people who have some capital but haven't reached that threshold but are thinking in this way. What is the advice to them, and how did they start working within and find syndications within them, within their group and their social group? Because we have, this
Well,
amazing access, within our own right, but not everybody else does, right? So what's the advice that you would give to them?
so one thing is, there's a lot of groups that I've noticed, it's like that create an LLC, put some money together in a bank account, and start purchasing and renting out properties, and you can buy shares into that LLC for whatever amount that you invest, right?
Right.
So I've been seeing a lot of that work out, but I'm also seeing a lot more individuals just purchasing homes under their name right now, without creating an LLC, because they're just trying to get their feet wet before they want to go through all the legal paperwork. So again, talk to your accountant and CPA about the legal, technicalities of all of that stuff. But you'll be surprised of how much house you can still afford to buy as an investment property, even though you feel that you may not have enough. Because
Right.
there are options all over DFW in all price ranges. You could buy a one bedroom condo in Garland for like $50,000, for
Right.
like with $10,000 down. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or you could buy a property that's $300,000 with $60,000 down. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just need to figure out how much you're willing to risk, and then we can always come up with a game plan for that.
I love it. I love it. So, Akbar, AK, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. Uh,
Thanks
Again,
for having me.
give all of your your information out, where we can find you on YouTube, and Akbar, the founder of AK Realty. He's just such an amazing and incredible resource. Just to talk to him. So reach out to him. Feel free to text him or DM him. But Akbar, if you can tell us again where we can reach you, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, so you can reach me on YouTube at AK Ali Realtor, or you can message me on Instagram and Facebook under Dallas Amplified, because we're amplifying Dallas. And you can call or text me at 972-905-9566, or just shoot me an email, ak@the akrealtygroup.com.
That's fantastic, and this is going to be posted on Facebook as well, so you guys can pause and play as needed, and get this information again. So, Akbar, thank